Fresno State University. I'm Jessica, here to report out only the most important information here on EHD180T Talk. In other news, last week we saw some amazing student-created micro-lesson teachings in Dr. DeWalt's EHD180T 62 course. Let's go ahead and head over to my co-anchor Cassidy to hear about two students and how they taught their lesson. Hey Cassidy, how you doing this afternoon?
Great, Jessica, thank you. For those of you who are just joining us today, stay tuned for a recap of Miss Scott and Miss Engleman's teaching of the kindergarten micro lesson. Let's take a look.
And you're going to download Simon Says. There's a lot of different versions and they're all very similar. And if you're confused, some of them look like this. I think one of them is Apple compatible and the other one is Samsung. So raise your hand if you're having trouble, but they all should be very similar, same game. In our hands we have pictures of the apps in case you're confused. Go ahead and download one of them and I want you to play around on the game for a few minutes. So during this first clip, we can see the first E, which is called engage. Here we can see that students are getting engaged by playing a game and they're touching that first little area of how to follow the rules through a game of Simon Says. Let's go ahead and move on to the next E, explore. We're going to talk about rules that we might have in our own lives. So right now you're going to get a worksheet and it's going to have 3 separate columns. The first column is going to have rules I have at home. The second column is rules I don't have at home. And the last column is going to be rules you wish you had at home. So these could be rules that your parents made, that your grandparents made, or whoever you live with, what they say you do and don't have to do at home. So I'll do an example in case we're confused. One rule I have at home is I always have to take my shoes off before I come inside. A rule I don't have at home is I don't have a bedtime. Because I'm a lot bigger than you guys. And this one's a little tricky, but you never know. Sometimes you might go to a friend's house and see that they have rules that you have to abide by because you're at their house. So maybe something I wish for is my parents don't send my friend home after a few days of hanging out. Does anyone need a bit more time? Can I get some volunteers to share? Marion?
A rule that I have at home is I have to brush my teeth after breakfast and before bed. A rule I don't have at home is I don't have to make my bed every morning. And a rule I wish I had is that we could have pizza for dinner every day.
So what we see here in Explore is before even the classroom rules are getting introduced, we are talking about our students' rules at home and why they have those rules and what rules do you have at home that are different from mine. And this is really important to touch on because we need to allow our students to understand that your life is different from mine. What your parents say is okay, my parents may say it's not okay. So this is kind of a connection between what you already know about rules and
you already know how to follow those rules because your mom and dad enforce them. And so we can really see what Miss Engleman and Miss Scott are trying to do here in this Explore.
So the first rule would be to listen when your teacher is talking.
Does anyone know what an example of this would be? How you could show us that you're following that rule in class? Jacob?
Eye contact.
Anyone else? Marion?
Not talking to someone else, because if you're talking, you're not listening.
Good. Our second rule is going to be follow directions quickly. Can anyone give me an example of that?
Don't dilly-dally.
Yes. Anyone else?
Make sure that we have our stuff put away when you ask them.
Yes. Another example of this could be lining up at the door quick as possible when we go to recess or lunch.
So our third rule is to respect others. Does anybody know how you would show that? Yeah.
Be nice to each other.
Anyone else?
Don't take something that doesn't belong to you.
Good job. Our fourth rule is raise your hand to speak. How could we do that? Like this? Good job. You just really followed the rule. Good job. And our last rule?
Our fifth rule is to be honest. How would you make sure that you follow that rule? Do you have an example? Yes, good guess.
By not lying.
Yeah.
Is there any other ways you could actually show how to do that?
Like if I found money on the floor, I would give it to the teacher.
Good job.
So here in Explain, we can see Miss Engleman and Miss Scott introducing the 5 classroom rules. And with that, they're trying to kind of introduce gestures and ways that you could show how to follow the rules. But before we kind of just give it away and they give the answers to their students, they're trying to see if they can think of any ways that they would follow those rules, because those might be rules they already have at home. The students clearly did a really good job of showing how they could follow those rules. Let's go ahead and move on to the next E, elaborate.
Our last rule, number 5, is to be honest. Some ways to follow the rule of being honest is to always tell the truth to your teachers, adults, and your friends. Some ways of breaking this rule is by lying or cheating off of someone else's work. We want to make sure that we're being honest all the time and doing our own work. Now that we know the rules, we can be sure to follow them. But if we break a rule, it will lead to something called a consequence, where we must take full responsibility of our actions. We will learn about that next week, though. For now, let's just focus on following the rules.
Okay, so does everybody have a pretty good idea about what a rule is? Pretty easy. So for the handout that I just handed you, I want you to write down each of our classroom rules, and then I want you to write an example of how you can follow that rule. You can use one of the ones that we gave you, or that we made up earlier, or you can make up your own example, whatever makes it easier for you to remember how to follow that rule. But make sure that you...
Here in the elaborate clip, we can see the Day 1 digital video is being played. This is an area for students to grasp what we've already kind of talked about, but here's the actual do's and don'ts, and here's your worksheet to go ahead and write some notes underneath those specific rules. Here's being honest, and okay, so this is a way not to be honest. Let me jot that down. So we're just kind of allowing students to elaborate on what they already know and make some notes so they can retain that information to what they already know.
Okay, so what you do, you have to choose 4 of the 5 rules. And you can do a demonstration, an illustration, or an original story. For the demonstration, you can do a skit, a play, or a musical. For the illustration, you can use your iPad or a poster board. And for the original story, you can write it like with pencil and paper, or you can type it on your computer. And it has to include 4 of the 5 rules, at least 4 of the 5 rules.
So in the last evaluate, we can see Miss Engleman and Miss Scott introducing what these students are going to be creating with a variety of options. They are introduced, though the product is not actually completed or began. The students are aware of what they have to do.
It's a pretty good job of demonstrating what we call the 5 E's. Now let's head back to Jessica to talk a little bit about what these students were expected to incorporate into their lesson plan.
Thanks, Cassidy. These two students in the making of elementary teachers were expected to incorporate a variety of different things into this lesson plan. UDL, multiple intelligences, CSP, and social justice were all topics that had to somehow be implemented into this lesson plan. Let's go ahead and take a look at the last E one more time. This one is evaluation. Take a look right now.
What you do, you have to choose 4 of the 5 rules. And you can do a demonstration, an illustration, or an original story. For the demonstration, you can do a skit, a play, or a musical. For the illustration, you can use your iPad or a poster board. And for the original story, you can write it like with pencil and paper, or you can type it on your computer. And it has to include 4 of the 5 rules, at least 4 of the 5 rules.
Wow, Jessica, there has to be at least 2 of these course tenets in just that.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Cassidy. In this short clip, we can see Miss Engleman and Miss Scott hitting the head of UDL by providing their students with options of expression and representation. Even with their representation, it's apparent that numerous multiple intelligences are present in this portion of the lesson. What do you think, Cassidy?
I think you're right, Jessica. It seems that visual spatial learners, verbal linguistic learners, bodily kinesthetic learners, musical rhythmical learners, and interpersonal learners were all kept in mind during the creation of this lesson.
I'd have to agree with that, Cassidy. All right, before we head to commercial break, let's talk about our favorite part about Miss Engleman and Miss Scott's lesson. Let's go ahead and take a look at my favorite part right now.
So our third rule is to respect others. Does anybody know how you would show that? Yes, Marian.
Nice to each other.
Good.
Anyone else?
Don't take something that doesn't belong to you.
Good job.
Good job.
This was definitely my favorite part of the video because I really liked watching the students kind of figure out how they were going to show how they could follow the rules before we even really talked about how you do follow the rules and how you don't. I think this allowed for a lot of student background and all in all, just students to be creative and do it in their own way.
My favorite part of the micro lesson was when Miss Scott was talking about the different definitions for the word rule. I find it really useful to have multiple definitions of the word of any word and to use whichever one works best for me.
So today the word of the day is rule. So there's a few different definitions. One would be it's a guide or a principle of for conduct or action. Another one is it's a statement that tells you what is allowed or what will happen within a particular system. It's a piece of advice about the best way to do something, or it's the way something is usually done.
I love that part too, Cassidy. All right, we're coming to a commercial break right now, but stay tuned to join us on the discussion of the whitewashed public education system and its disadvantages to our students. In other news, I'm Jessica.
And I am Cassidy.
This is EHD180T Talk. We'll be back.